Ladies and gentlemen, Frank Sinatra.
Tommy, come out and take another bow. Tom Dreesen, ladies and gentlemen. There he is. That's my man. My number one man. Tommy's funny, isn't he? He's a marvelous guy, Tommy is. Where is he? Take a bow, pal. There, this is a funny man. And a nice man.
Everybody listen to Darren Carter. We all know that he's a party starter. So if you want to listen to a podcast for free, listen to our Pocket Party. Pocket Party.
This is Morgan Freeman, and you are listening to one of the most important podcasts ever made in the history of podcasting, the Pocket Party Podcast with my good friend, Darren Carter.
Somebody somewhere is depending on you to do what God has called you to do. And we're back. Wow, am I feeling motivated and inspired and just good? Can I tell you that? Just good. The reason I started this Pocket Party podcast was to, add light to the world, a little bit of inspiration, a little bit of motivation, and keep people entertained. And one of the guests that I've been wanting to get for a long time is on the show, Tom Dreesen. He's great. I love Tom Dreesen. And so last night I interviewed him at his home. Fantastic. After the show, he's like, let's grab dinner. So we got in his, I don't want to give out too much information, but top of the line vehicle. Fantastic. Looked like a modern day spaceship. It was incredible. I'm like, it was great. It was great. Okay. And then we chatted another 90 minutes. It was great. And just, when you get in people's cars, I like to live in their world, unless it's like a really close friend, like my wife or my brother-in-law. Then I'll be like, hey, can we change the channel? But when it's, somebody else, I'm like, I like to listen to their music, kind of see how they, especially if I know it's a short drive. It's like, all right, cool. I'm sure if it's like a 10-day drive, you're like, dude, can we like stop listening to like polka, banjo, country, hip hop, trap, whatever the heck this is. But like that anybody ever listens to that. But so I get into, Tom's vehicle after the podcast, and it's, we're playing some Frank Sinatra, some Michael Bublé. I'm on the way to the boxing gym today. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to listen to some Sinatra. So I'm like listening to Frank. And I got to tell you, there's something about listening to like great music. It just elevates your mood. I'm like, fly me to the moon. I'm like listening to Frank Sinatra. Then I flipped. I don't know. Somehow I accidentally changed the channel to like, I think it's like one channel over. And I heard like Kenny Rogers, you decorated my life. It just, attitude of gratitude, in this Kenny Rogers song, he's talking about how, his life was a blank piece of paper and he got into a relationship and she decorated his life with little, poignant things along the way. And I'm like, dang, this is relatable as heck. But anyways, so yeah, that was my day today so far. And I got a cup of coffee, listening to some Sinatra, editing this podcast, and, just being thankful that I have you guys, and and I got good family and good friends, and my brother-in-law, he took my son to his very first football game, went to go see the Rams play the Buccaneers. The Rams lost, but it was a great game, and it was really cool. Actually, we were watching it on TV in high definition, and my son was in the stadium, and then when he came home, he's like, wow, I could see it way better on TV. It's like, yeah, you can, but the experience is cool though, right? Like, going to a live NFL game, I got to be honest, I've never been to one, but I would imagine that it's got to be pretty cool. Imagine if like the first time I go to a football game, I'm performing at the Super Bowl. That'd be pretty cool. I'll do it. Hey, if you book the Super Bowl, give me 5 minutes. I'll go out there and rock your world at halftime. Anyhow, if you guys go to cameo.com/official Darren Carter, I can do a personalized video message to you. And why wouldn't you? I can do a birthday shout out to somebody or for yourself. I can get you hyped up before you go to the party. Halloween's coming up. I'll leave a spooky message for somebody, a video. I do. It's all on camera. In fact, somebody hired me to wish their dog happy birthday, and I wished their dog happy birthday, and I wished somebody's birthday. They were like 2 years old. My son and I were on there. Anyways, we got a great podcast, and if you like this podcast and you like the Army one with Paul Lilly, it was a 2-parter. It was fantastic. Shout out to the troops. And the one before that was, I want to say episode 76, guy who drives a Tesla in San Diego working for Uber. Like it's some company that merged with him, and he's picking people up, but it's great. It's fascinating. Any of the podcast episodes you listen to and you like what we do, and you're like, man, Darren, I wish I could, buy you a cup of coffee or buy you lunch or something. It's easy. You either do the Cameo video or go to darrencarter.com. There's a little button there that says support the podcast. You hit that PayPal button and you could be like Mike Bagak. He donated $100. So thank you, Mike Bagak. I really do appreciate that. I want to thank Rems. Rems is a big supporter. I want to thank Jim Bryan Music all the way in the Netherlands, and Curtis Marsh Music, and the Miguel Romero. Anybody that sent in music or threw in some money on the PayPal. Anybody that's drawn art for the podcast. If you're an artist, I love that stuff. And I'll help promote you back as well. Anyways, let's get into it, guys. It's a great episode. You're going to feel good. If you're drinking coffee, go make yourself another cup and listen to this and enjoy it. Let's start that party in your ear holes, all right? Let's get your jollies.
Pocket party.
Go ahead and give me a little sound check.
1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4, 3, 2, 1.
That's the voice I've been waiting to get on this Pocket Party podcast. The great Tom Dreesen. He's been on The Tonight Show 61 times. Hope I get that right. First black and white comedy team, over 500 television appearances. Opened for Sinatra 10 years.
14 years.
14 years? Dang it. I knew I'd get something wrong. I'm off the trivia show. But every time that I see that you're on a podcast, I download it and I listen to it, and I'm so excited to have you. So, Tom, thank you for being on the show.
Well, I'm happy to be here because you're a bright, young comedian. But, and you say to me, I'm not that young. But you know what? When you're my age, everybody's a young comedian.
Yeah. You're great. Now, I've been trying to get you on for a long time. Our schedule's finally aligned. And on Monday, I think I sent you the text, and you're like, my voice, and you called me back right away, and you said my voice. But thank God it went through, and you were able to do it.
Yeah, I was on the road for like 16 days, 17 days, doing all kinds of shows, corporate events, as well as personal appearances. I had to be there. And then also I sang "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" at Wrigley Field in front of 48,000 people. But I've done that every year for 17 years. Joe Mantegna and I are tied for the most guest appearances. But when you sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" at Wrigley, you really have to boom it out. And all of a sudden, in and out of airplanes, as you know, traveling, I came back last week, and Monday morning, I couldn't talk. And when you were talking to me about doing this podcast, I said, I don't know how I'm going to get through it. But through the week, the honey and tea and all that kind of stuff slowly got me to lozenges where I'm talking now.
Yeah. Are you now when you sing "Take Me Out to the Ball"? Is that something you practice? Are you a singer as well, or is it?
I'm not a singer, but fortunately, what happened? Harry Carey for the Cubs used to sing "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" in the 7th inning. He had the worst voice on the planet. And in fact, when I was touring with Frank Sinatra, Frank heard him one day when we were in Chicago, and he said, I got to go over there and teach Harry how to sing that song. But because of that, when Harry passed away, they decided to let celebrities, if they're in town, to do that. And so I can carry a tune. I was in an altar boy, and I was in the choir, and I can carry a tune. And so but "Take Me Out to the Ball Game" isn't a hard song to sing,
Yeah. It must be exciting to do that. I mean, 17 years, there you go. You're back to your hometown of Chicago, and
I have to tell you something how intimidating it is. Now, you're a comedian. We go up in front of all different kinds of audiences. But when they first asked me to do it, I said, sure. And it didn't seem like a problem. When I had to walk up like 6 flights of stairs, by the time you get up there, you're gasping, and then you get up these straight up to the top. And then they bring me into that booth. And now I'm looking out over thousands and thousands of people. And just for a moment, I went, oh my God, I don't do this. Isn't not what I do. I'm not a singer.
Yeah.
And the first year it was kind of intimidating, but each year it got better, and now I have so much fun with it. I really enjoy doing it.
That's so cool. That's great. And so you were you at the Laugh Factory last night?
Yeah. Well, this is my 50th year in show business.
Yeah.
When I started out, everywhere you went in America, people say, what do you do for a living? You say, I'm a stand-up comedian. The next question out of their mouth is, oh, yeah, have you ever been on Johnny Carson? So in the eyes of America, you weren't a comedian until you got on Johnny Carson. Well, how you got on Johnny Carson was you had to work clean. You had to, do material that could make grandma and grandpa, mom and dad, and the kids laugh. So we were constantly taking our tape recorders to the Comedy Store or the improvisation in those days, and then later even the Laugh Factory, to work on these routines that would get you on television. So and keep coming up with new material. So I've been in the habit of doing this for so many years that even now, where I don't need to work the Laugh Factory, it isn't a money-making situation for me, but I need to stay oiled.
Yeah.
And also working the Laugh Factory keeps me in touch with. Every night you go on that stage, as you know, you and I worked there together. There's young black, young white, young Asian, young Latino. There's young, Japanese, young Korean. There's every type of ethnicity in that room, and I want to see it stay in touch with my material to see if it stays in touch with them, and that's the great feedback we get from them.
It's true. It's a thing that I've noticed when I started, I was 20. I was underage, and I was like, oh, the audience is, if they were over 30, I'm like, I don't really have material for them yet. Like guys talking about being married and having kids. I'm like, and then as you get older, you're like, hey, I'm the same age as the audience. And now I'm like, okay, I'm starting to be like older than, when you started, were you like really, were you in your 20s, your 30s? Like,
yeah, in my 20s.
In your 20s.
When I first started, Tim Reed and I, as you alluded to in the introduction, Tim Reed and I were America's first black and white comedy team. History shows we were the last. We were from 1969 to 1975. We toured the nation with no comedy clubs. There were no comedy clubs in those days. So we worked all black clubs in the North and the South, what they have affectionately called the Chitlin Circuit, black-owned, black-operated nightclubs. And we also worked all white clubs. And we worked the Playboy Circuit and as we progressed along the line. But we worked nightclubs, and it was a totally different, they were different venues. Again, there were no comedy clubs. So when I first went on stage, I was in my 20s with Tim. When the team split up and I came out here, I was at like 29. By that time I had 5-6 years experience on stage, but always with a partner, never alone,
That's a little bit of out of the comfort zone, I would imagine.
Yeah, it was a whole new thing being alone on stage after being with a partner, and actually the first time I ever went on stage was with him as well as him with me.
Yeah.
So we, what I learned about comedy to bring back a point with you. The one thing that annoys me more than anything in the world is to go before some kid 24 or 25 years old who's the head of comedy development at Columbia or at Warner Brothers or whatever, and he thinks that the only way you can relate to an audience is if he's got a 24-year-old audience who he's trying to appeal to 24 to 30, then you have to be a comedian that's 24 to 30, which is insanity. Every comedian that you'll ever talk to will tell you funny is funny is funny is funny. Do you know how many times at the Laugh Factory that I followed Rodney Dangerfield?
I love it.
When Roddy was 80 years old and killed that audience.
I love it, yeah.
So it's absolute BS,
It is.
Can you swear on your show?
Yeah, go for it.
It's absolute bullshit, for you to say that
100%.
We've got, or even worse, to say we've got a senior citizen's place and we need to get a senior citizen comedian, a 24-year-old comedian going and fracture him, because comedy is comedy is comedy and funny is funny is funny.
It's true. I remember when I was growing up, I listened to the different comedy. There was a station in Fresno, and they would play comedy 1 hour on AM radio every Saturday, and then I'd also listen to Dr. Demento, and then they had like the version of like the 5 o'clock funnies with comedians. And as I became an adult, I realized like most of the comedians I was a fan of were, like you said, they were in their 60s, 70s, 80s. They weren't. I'm not going to listen to like fellow like teenagers. I mean, it was funny because these guys were great, and they talked about life experience and things that happened.
Yeah, you can, and through the years in doing corporate dates, I can sometimes measure the audience, and especially if I know in advance on a corporate date, they'll say our audience is 40 to 60 or 60 to 80 or whatever.
Yeah.
Then I may come up with some material that really relates to that specific audience. But for the most part, every time you go in front of an audience, you have a mom and dad, they had a mom and dad.
Right.
You have siblings, they have siblings. You went to grade school, they went to grade school. You went to high school, you went to college. You were in the military, they were in the military. I mean, so it's just relating your personal experiences to an audience that's had those same kind of personal experiences. The wonderful thing about comedy is that it crosses all lines. That if a Jewish comedian gets up there and starts talking about him being raised in a Jewish family, I'm a Gentile, but he has a mom and dad, and I do. He might say something about the way he was raised. I'll say, my parents were like that.
Yeah.
Or you know what? I'm not Jewish, but also in my church we did things that whatever it is, we find out through comedy we have a lot more in common than you realize. Comedy is that bridge across the sea to all ethnicities, all races and religions and creeds.
Absolutely. And in your lifetime with your career, you've opened so many doors with it's amazing how you think of it. It's like a passport to like another world. You're meeting these people, and before we turn on the mic, you said that you had a friend that came out to the show last night, and that's somebody like I would love to be at that level where I start inviting I start getting in that world of knowing people like that. Like you said he does polls.
His name is Frank Luntz, and I met him because he does these great polls around the country, and he's a brilliant man and very quiet, and he's so much interested in you. If you're the doorman, if you're the waiter, if you're the guy who dumps garbage, if you're you're the president of the United States, he's very much interested in how you think. And he polls people all across the land. So he's a fascinating guy, but he had never been to the Laugh Factory, and he wanted to see my show last night. And so I said, yeah, sure. He's been saying for years, I want to come and see you. He's seen me at corporate dates and functions like that. He said, I want to come and see you in front of a live audience. And he had the greatest time, at the Laugh Factory last night. But your whole career, when you're a brand new comedian, you start to worry at first. Geez, I don't know if I want my mom and dad to see me, if I want my aunt and uncle, I want my brother and sister, till I at least have some form of an act, And the worst thing you can do is invite your family to see you when you're not ready.
Right.
Because, but the problem with most comedians is they always think they're ready way before they are. And sometimes it takes 5 or 6 years. They look back and they go, "Oh my God, what was I thinking?"
Oh, I remember I had a roommate once, and I showed them a tape. I'm like, "Look at this! I crushed," or whatever the word was back then. Yeah. And I remember him tuning out. Just about. Well, first of all, back then I showed like me walking to the stage, grabbing the. I'm just way too much, and then. Yeah. I noticed he kind of just checked out about a minute in, and I'm like, maybe I shouldn't be showing this tape to anybody.
Well, I always say, to young comedians all the time, never ever showcase until you're really ready. Because if they catch you dirty, they catch you not ready.
Right.
That's the way they remember you. You'll say, somebody will say, this kid Darren Carter, I think he's really good. Oh no, I saw him. I wasn't that impressed. Well, when did you see him? Well, I saw him 2 years ago. No. You haven't. They don't realize that we grow. They say, no, I saw him, and their first impression stays with them. So that's why I tell all young comedians, don't be in a hurry to showcase yourself till you're really, really ready. First of all, comedy is not a 5K or a 10K. It's a triathlon. It's a lifetime. So there's no hurry in comedy. We always get panicky, young comedians especially. Oh my God, I started out with Darren, and Darren got the Tonight Show the other night, and we started out together, and they start to panic. You're not in competition with Darren. The one thing I tell young comedians all the time, there's a great Hindu proverb, said there's nothing noble about being superior to another man. True nobility lies in being superior to your former self. Am I a better friend than I was last year? Am I a better son than I was last year? Am I a better father than I was last year? Am I a better comedian than I was last year? Your only competition your whole life is with your former self. Listen to your tapes. Have you grown from last year? Have you got some new material in the show? Are you continuing to grow? That's your only competition, your former self,
I love it. That's why I wanted you on the podcast. Stuff like that. You're so good at that. Like you're so good at recalling and having these almost like a roadmap in your mind. I heard you on one interview saying something to the effect of, "Don't let someone else's words like if someone said you're Chinese," and you're like, "There's no way I'm Chinese. I'm not Chinese." But if someone said you're not funny, then your mind you might be like, well, maybe they know something, or something like you said something like that.
What I say is, other people's words, other people's words have no power over you. Your own negative thoughts have no power over you unless you allow them to have power over you. And as new comedians, when we're new, if somebody says, I don't think you can make it in the business, you're not funny, and it crushes you, you're devastated by that. I tell them, other people's words have no power over you unless you allow that power over you. It's like if I said to Darren Carter, who was obviously Caucasian, and I said, if somebody said to you, Darren, do you know you're Chinese? You'd say, no, I'm not. I'm Irish German or Irish Italian or whatever I am. Yeah. They'd say, no, you're Chinese. You'd walk away and say, this guy's nuts. You would not even absorb that.
Yeah.
Or if you said to a Chinese person, you're African American, they say, no, I'm not. Yes, you are. they wouldn't pay any attention to that.
Right.
That's the same way you react when somebody says you're not funny or you're not going to make it in the business. Pay no attention to that at all. Other people's words have no power over you unless you allow them to have power, and your own negative thoughts do not have power over you unless you give them that permission.
Yeah. Do you in this business there's ups and downs, ebb and flows, it's like a roller coaster. Do you when you're having it down, I mean you've been so your career's been so high, like I said, touring with Frank Sinatra. I mean when things like this end, it's got to be a thing where you're like, how does a person deal with that when you're things are cooking and you're happening and then something it slows down a little bit? How do you pull yourself up in those other moments?
First of all, I know this is not good. A lot of people listening to this won't believe what I'm about to say to you is, I mean this with all my heart. I never ever cared about being rich and famous. I really didn't. I really wanted to influence people in my life. That was important to me. Could I influence people to be better than they are? Because I came from the raggediest situation. I had holes in my shoes, 8 brothers and sisters, lived in a shack. I shined shoes in taverns. I set pins in bowling alleys. I caddied in the summertime. I sold newspapers on the corner. I had a paper out, all to feed my brothers and sisters. I came from the worst situation, both parents alcoholic at one time. And all I thought about in life is that if I ever make it, I would like to help other people make it. I read somewhere, I think Mark Twain said it, somebody said that successful people, small people will belittle your ambitions. Do not let small people belittle your ambitions. Successful people want you too to become successful. And that's what I always wanted to do. I wanted to get to a point, excuse me, where I could influence people to as a stand-up comedian, we influence people every night by making them laugh, because laughter is healthy.
Yeah.
And I can elaborate on that later on. But how important the stand-up comedians are to our society, But that I also wanted to, if I gained any amount of success, those who were traveling the same path that I traveled, could I influence them somehow into not giving up? When the time comes. I'm finishing a book right now called Standing Still. I'm sorry, Still Standing is the title of my book. It's going to say,
ooh, I like it. Still Standing.
It's a double entendre.
Yeah.
Because I've been knocked down so many times in my career, but I kept getting back up again. I boxed when I was in the service.
Did you really?
Yeah,
that's awesome.
But I never.
Yeah.
There was a guy I knew from my neighborhood as a kid, and this sounds like bragging. I don't want this to sound like bragging, but it was a black guy. He grew up. His name was Donald Brackens. His nickname was Tutu, and Tutu was a tough guy. He was a nice guy, wonderful guy, but he was a tough guy. He said, "I don't want to fight Dreesen." He said, "I can whip him. I'll whip him." He said, "But he's going to come back tomorrow, and I'm going to have to whip him again." He said, "But then you know what? He's going to come back the next day, and I'm going to have to whip him again." He said, and he'll come back a month later when he heals, and I'm going to have to whip him again. So I don't want to fight him the first time because he won't give up. And I appreciate that more than anything else because that's the way I was.
That's awesome.
That's the way I was. And any fight I got into, and I don't necessarily mean physical fights.
Yeah.
I mean just fighting the elements, fighting life, fighting the ups and downs. I never wanted to give up, and so that's what I want to do more than anything, is to influence people as opposed to becoming rich and famous. So I was so content of being a stand-up comedian when I found this profession that, that when I was struggling, hitchhiking up and down Sunset Boulevard, begging to work for free at the Comedy Store, I still had such great gratitude that I could get up and make people laugh. And even though it was at a low level, it was in front of, at 2 o'clock in the morning in front of 4 people, I was so grateful that I had this gift.
Attitude of gratitude.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so as time went by, and now I'm doing the Tonight Shows, and now I'm getting some sort of respect. And then Sammy Davis Jr. took me on the road for years, and then Dean Martin put me on the Dean Martin roast, and then Smokey Robinson wanted me to tour with him, and Gladys Knight and the Pips, and Natalie Cole, Mac Davis, and all these people that I toured with. Tony Orlando and Don, and then finally Frank Sinatra.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing.
But I was still a stand-up comedian first, last, and always. So when Frank passed away, I went from flying in private jets all over the world, appearing in front of 20,000 people every night in these huge arenas, appearing in Vegas, and we were under contract to 7 different hotels at one time. Every 2 years with a different hotel. I went from that rarefied air back to being Tom Dreesen, getting on the plane and saying, "You got anything in, coach?" After flying in private jets, But I was never down because I was still grateful that I could make people laugh, and it didn't matter if I made them laugh at a level of 20,000 people or there was 20 people in the audience. I was so thrilled that I could still do that.
That's amazing, and that's, I for myself, I find like if I have like a moment of, things are, frustration or whatever. Exercise gets me out of it, and also having like a to-do list of something to do, like, whether it's putting out this podcast or putting out another video on YouTube, really putting something out there and at the end, I'm like, wow, I feel happier. Why? Because I said I was going to do something and then I did it. Just like you're writing this book, it's great.
Well, I wrote I was in another book called Tim and Tom, an American Comedy in Black and White. Tim Reed and I wrote that book with the help of a guy named Ron Rappaport, and it was about the years of being America's first black and white comedy team. And then when I wrote this book here, this is about my life,
Yeah.
And after this...
Are you still writing this book?
It's completed now. The final manuscript. We're just now doing the editing, some editing to it because I've got way too many words in it,
That's a good problem.
Yeah, it's a good problem to have. It's right. But I what you're saying is right. See, the other thing too is for stand-up comedians that are listening to this show, don't make this your everything in life. You have to have a diversion. I love golf, so I play a lot of golf. I also love my children and my grandchildren now, and so I make that a part of my life. If you were to make a pie, make a circle on a piece of paper like a pie. Slice it into maybe 5 different slices, and you try to balance. One is career. One would be family. One would be friends. One would be relationship. And try to dedicate time to those things. I left one out. I can't remember what it. But anyhow, it shows that you have balance in your life. That what I did one time, I wrote the pie, and I realized that 90% of what my pie was career, my profession. And so I realized I had to put more balance in my life, spend more time with family, with friends, the relationship. You're married or you or whatever. They got to commit to those things.
I'm married with a son. He's 12. Happy birthday, Austin. He just turned 12 on Thursday.
Oh, happy birthday, Austin. Yeah. Thursday, so he's a Virgo.
Yeah. He's a Libra. I just found out he's a Libra. Oh, no. My wife is a Virgo. She's September 2nd.
See, mine's September 11th. That's why when you said that, what a great day for me, 9/11, right? That ruined it. Well, happy birthday to the boy. And I have to tell you something interesting. Many years ago, because you have a son, a magazine wanted me to do an article to find out maybe what all stand-up comedians might have in common. So I started asking these kind of comedians, Johnny Carson, Don Rickles, David Letterman, Jay Leno, George Miller, all the comedians I knew, Johnny Dark. I just said, did your father ever put his arms around you and hug you and say, I love you? I couldn't find one comedian. I had a comedian say, my father loved me. I said, did he tell you? No, he didn't tell me, but I knew he loved. No, that's not my point. I just was curious. Did you ever have a father who put his arms around you and said, I love you, and I'm so proud of you, son. I love you. And I couldn't find one comedian that could answer that correctly. Now, I may have done that survey with bartenders and got the same results. I don't know. But I was trying to find if we had that one common thread. So, therefore, I knew that my son would never be a comedian because I told him I loved him every day of his life, And,
I do the same thing with Austin. I love you, Austin.
And Austin will never be a stand-up comedian.
Exactly.
See, there's two types of performers, those who want the love of an audience and those who need the love of an audience.
Yeah.
And there's a distinct difference between those two.
Yep.
Maybe some nights when you're out there and that laughter, Don Rickles used to say laughter is love. Maybe that laughter you're getting is that father saying, I'm proud of you, Darren. I'm proud of you. I'm so happy for what you're doing, and I'm proud of you. And your dad loves you. Maybe that's what that laughter is for us.
Hey, man, I'm adopted. I was raised in a foster home. You might you probably hit the nail on hit the hammer on the nail of the head right there. Yeah.
It's now again, that survey may have worked with bartenders. I don't know,
right.
But it was interesting that I couldn't find one.
Now, the older generation, maybe they didn't. I don't know. I wasn't around. Was it a thing that isn't there like a thing with the stoic father that's like, I don't tell my son I love him,
depending on the ethnicity. It depends. A lot of times, like the Irish were real proud. I'm Irish Italian. The Irish are real proud. You're going to make a sissy the boy, and you're not a man till you sit down and have a drink with your father, and you're never too old that I can take you around the barn and teach you a lesson there, lad. And all that kind of stuff. What's interesting? I'll tell you something interesting that we're on this. Speaking of ethnicities, that I caddied an all-Jewish country club when I was a kid, and it was called Ravislow Country Club, and it was the members were all Jewish. In fact, you had to be German Jewish. You couldn't be a Polish Jew or
it was like that specific.
Russian. It had so it was but the thing is. I was asked the question many years ago, before you were ever born, probably, when I was in the business, why are there so many Jewish comedians? Because there were a lot of Jewish comedians in those days, as there are today. I said, because I believe they encourage you to be funny. When I was caddying at the country club, first of all, I'm Irish Italian Catholic, right? I went to Catholic school. Nuns do not reward you for ad libs, and they whip that ruler out on you. And meantime, my parents used to say, children ought to be seen and not heard.
Mine said that too.
Children ought to be seen and not heard. So if you were a funny guy, you were a wise guy or a wiseacre, and so. But when I was caddying at the Jewish Country Club, oftentimes the member would say, there's my nephew, Sidney. What do you hear? Sidney, come here. Sidney, he's 10 years old. Sidney, tell him what you said last night at the dinner table. And then Sidney would say, and they would all laugh and applaud him. That's funny. They encouraged humor.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that a sense of humor is the greatest gift that God can bestow upon a human being. And a sense of humor, by my humble definition, is not when you have the ability to laugh at others' shortcomings or misfortunes, when you have the ability to laugh at yourself, at your own. I think the Irish are the best at it. Most people would watch comedians perform, and if there was a Jewish comedian up there, if there was a Gentile, then he shouldn't be doing jokes about Jewish people. And if there's a Jewish comedian, he shouldn't be doing jokes about Gentiles. And if that's how a lot of people think. The Irish don't give a damn if you're an orangutan. Right. That's funny, lad. You're right. We do like a bit of the hotty toddy for the body. And the Irish, to me, have always had the greatest sense of humor, the ability to laugh at yourself.
I love it.
Yeah,
that's great. That's interesting. And I remember on the last podcast, so you were on my previous podcast. I had a partner and then he quit and whatever. And I was like, man, if I do this podcast thing, I got to start all over. And it's hard to start all over from zero, like 0 listeners, 0 episodes. And I've been doing it. This is, I believe, episode 78. And on one of the things that I love that you said last time is you got a call from we were talking about finding work and people reaching out to you. And apparently you were saying how there was some theater in the middle of Illinois and they were like, it's going to be a show at noon. And you're like, I don't know, 800 people. And then do you know what I'm getting at?
Yes.
Okay.
I do a 90-minute show called An Evening of Laughter and Stories of Sinatra. And it's stand-up comedy. the theater goes dark and there's a screen comes down, and Dennis Farina, God rest his soul, a good friend of mine, actor who passed away, but he narrates my life on film, about 3.5 minutes of film of my childhood, my going in the military, meeting Tim Reed, Tim and Tom, and it goes on to the Tonight Show and Frank Sinatra and so forth and so on. After 3.5 minutes, I come out and I start doing stand-up comedy. And I do about 20, 25 minutes of stand-up comedy, and I segue over to a bar on the stage, and I tell a real funny story at the bar, and all the lights go out in the theater, and on the screen, Frank Sinatra singing. It's 2:45. There's no one in the place except you and me. Set 'em up, Joe. So it's a saloon song that Frank would, and I'm at a bar, right? And when Frank gets to the chorus, make it one for my baby and one more for the road, he goes off screen and the spotlight hits me. And now I'm in a bar, and I've come home, and the audience is in a bar with me. And I tell them that the first time I heard that voice, I was 8 years old, shining shoes in a bar on the south side of Chicago, and he was on the jukebox. And I take the audience from that little boy hearing Sinatra on the jukebox on the south side of Chicago to one day carrying his coffin out of a church in Beverly Hills, California. So I take them on that journey. And I have them laughing. While I'm telling stories, pictures are coming on the screen authenticating the stories that I'm telling, and some video of Frank and I. But I have them laughing, and then I get them to the funeral, and I have them in tears. I take them through all that, and then I turn right around and I have a closing funny monologue that segues out of there till they're laughing again. And then I toast them at the end, because I have a bottle of Jack Daniels on the stage, and that was Frank's drink of choice. And I end it by toasting him, saying, I wish for all of you what Frank Sinatra wished for you. The very last song that he ever sang is that the best is yet to come. I said, good night, everybody. And Frank is now singing, the best is yet to come, as they're leaving the theater.
Wow.
Now, so this is, to get back, this is a long answer to your short question. A friend of mine in Chicago said to me, an Italian friend of mine, he said, my niece is the talent coordinator at a theater in Frankfurt, Illinois, and she'd like to talk to you. Can I give her your direct number? I said, sure. So she calls me. Her name is Denise Aducci, a very nice lady. She said, Mr. Dreesen, we'd like to have you come. We have a theater here in a high school, and we want you to come to the theater in a high school in Frankfurt, Illinois. And I said, I don't do high schools, but I took your call. Yeah. She said, Mr. Dreesen, could I send you an email? And she sends me an email while we're talking of the theater. It's a state-of-the-art theater inside a high school, 810 seats. I said, it's fabulous. Fabulous. It looks like you're on Broadway. She said, Mr. Dreesen, we would love to have you do your one-man show here that we've heard so much about. I said, first of all, I don't know that I could draw 810 people in Frankfurt, Illinois on a Saturday night. She said, Mr. Dreesen, it's not a Saturday night. It's Wednesday. I said, well, I'm not going to draw 810 people on a Wednesday night in Frankfurt. She said, Mr. Dreesen, it's not Wednesday night. It's Wednesday morning at 11 o'clock, and you got to be out of there by 12:30. I said, I'm not going to go there and embarrass you or embarrass me, Denise, but thank you. She said, Mr. Dreesen, I'll give you 2 weeks before the show. If we don't have it sold out, you can abort the project. She said, seriously? I said, okay. We didn't sell 810 seats. We sold 870. They had to put 60 folding chairs in there. And I came back a year later and did the same thing. This time sold it out in 3 days. Not because, and by the way, I didn't do one radio show, one TV show, one newspaper, had nothing. They had a subscribers list. That opened my eyes to something. I said, every theater that calls me, I said, do you have a subscribers list? And they do now through the social media. They've got this, sometimes they have 40,000, and you need to fill the place of 500. And I'm going to end it with this. I tell every stand-up comedian, as I told you one time, every one of you have a story. You have a 90-minute show, and you have a story. No one's had your same mom and dad. You just told me something I didn't know about you.
Yeah.
That's material. You make that funny. You can turn that into a 90-minute show. Every one of us has a film in us of where we came from, how we got there, how we got to where we're at right now, where we hope to go in the future, and all of the heartache along the way. I always thought when I started out, a good comedian could make you laugh for an hour and a half, but a great comedian can make you laugh and cry in an hour and a half. I only saw two comedians do that, Richard Pryor and Red Skelton.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And when I saw them, I said, one day I want to try that. That's a challenge because when we get them on a roll, we don't want to leave them.
Right.
I mean, we ain't going to turn it around.
Yeah.
When you get them, you're now killing them, you're crushing it, as you said earlier. And now you got them and you got in the palm of your hand. You're going to ditch all that and take them to a dark place and then try to bring them back. That's a challenge for anybody in our business.
Yeah, that's interesting. Do you what was your first dabble with that? Like as far as like laughing, okay. Do you remember that? Your first dabble
Sure.
of like, okay, you guys are laughing, let's
I did it. I tried it with this one-man play, Shining Shoes, and Sinatra is what I called it at first. With my 90-minute show, I later called it an evening of laughter. And stories of Sinatra. And the first time that when I went out there, I walked out with a monologue, and then went into some real serious places. And at first, it was scary. Because we need to hear that laughter. And now,
then your mind, my insecurity would be like, I hope they're not bored yet. I hope, oh my God, they're drift. It's not.
And the problem was, I was on a bright stage with a spot on me, and I couldn't see their faces. And when I was going into like 12 minutes of a real serious conversation, I wasn't sure they were with me. I didn't know if they got up and walked out. But then after a while, I could almost feel them. Oh. You could hear a gasp or something, and then now today it's proven material, so now I know it works. But it's scary at first because we're used to getting so many beats and a laugh. When I first did the Tonight Show, I would take my tape recorder and I would count the laughs. When I got 22 to 26 laughs, I knew that was tight material for the Tonight Show. My 5 or 6 minute routine had to have 22 to 26 laughs in it. 60 seconds on television without a laugh is an eternity, So, so in those days you had to go ba-dum, 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 laugh, ba-dum, 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 laugh,
So when you go from that to 12 minutes of
silence,
you're just like, okay.
And are they still there?
Yeah.
And at the end of that scene, if you get applause or something, you realize that you had them, that they were following you all along,
It's interesting. Like with my comedy, I was, especially early on, I thought, okay, don't breathe. Just be fast. And then as I got more seasoned, I learned to relax. And the last 6 years, I've learned to really relax. And, I know that I'm going to have moments of burst of energy and chaotic, but that's okay. Take a sip of water, relax. It's really fun to see that. And I haven't gotten to the point where I can do 12 minutes of, but I have noticed if I just do the silly little fun stuff, good night, it's not as effective as when I can do the silly fun stuff. And then I'm not going to say give them a message, but I have been dabbling with that, playing with that a little bit. And as simple as I end every episode of the podcast with, because when you said boxing, I go to a boxing gym 3 times a week. And I love it for the physical fitness. And one of the things that his name is Coach Ward, and I love it. I picked up on this when the boxers would leave, because they're mostly pros there, or amateurs trying to be pros, but mostly pros. He would say this thing. He'd say like, "All right, now don't hurt nobody. Okay, don't hurt nobody." And then when I would leave, he'd say, "Be careful." so I would say that part as the joke, but then I would say it on the podcast, and then one day I said, I'm going to say this on stage, and I said, don't hurt nobody. And then I'd say, be careful. They'd laugh. And then I thought, I'm going to end it like this. I go, you guys, be careful. Don't hurt nobody, including yourself. Good night.
Yeah.
And I felt like it felt good to say, and I think that connected with people.
Sure. First of all, every stand-up comedian out there, everybody who wants to be a stand-up comedian, remember what I'm about to say. It's a conversation, not a presentation. Is it your act?
I like that.
Absolutely. But it's your job to make it look like it's not your act. It's a conversation. And the way I advise young comedians all the time, I'll say, Darren, it's like this. Your wife said, oh my gosh, that phone never rings. Now, should we stop or should we let it ring? Because it's going to ring.
Let it ring. That's kind of cool.
Yeah. And it's probably an agent calling me with a major gig right now, and I'm turning it down. I'm doing Darren Carter's podcast, telling this agent, I'm sorry, I can't take your call. It's probably a telemarketer. For some reason, they call on Sunday nights. We're doing this on a Sunday night. But I say conversation, not presentation. When I'm giving talks to young comedians, I'll write that on the blackboard. But it's like this. I say, Darren, your wife says to you, Darren, my God, we got 20 people in the living room. I don't have dinner ready yet. It's going to be a little bit late. Go out there and tell them about your mom and dad. Tell them about how you were raised. Go tell them some of those stories you're always telling. And you walk out there into the living room and you say, dinner's going to be ready in a few minutes. But I got to tell you something. The other day, I was thinking about when I was growing up, and maybe you had this experience, and you start going into your act, but it's a conversation, not a presentation. Now, the other thing I tell young comedians, think about what I'm about to tell you. You're walking into your living room. This is our house, not their house. So when you walk out on a stage, I don't care if you've never worked that stage before, we always think when we're new, oh my God, I'm invading their territory. I'm coming into their space. Oh, no. They're coming to our space. This is our house. If they could do what we do, they'd be up here doing it. They can't. That's why they're out there. So this is our house.
It's a great way to look at it.
It gives you a better command of the environment. When I first went to Vegas with Sammy Davis Jr., Caesar's Palace was the first place I worked in Las Vegas. In the afternoon, before I started, I walked out and I familiarized myself with that stage. Sammy Davis saw me. And he came out of his dressing room and he said, "Are you all right, babe?" He always called me babe. "Are you all right, babe?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "You're a little bit nervous?" I said, "Well, it's my first time in Las Vegas and I'm opening for Sammy Davis Jr." Yeah, I'm a little bit. He said, "See these boards?" And we call them boards on the stage, He said, "See these boards, Tom?" I said, yeah. He said, "You earned every one of these boards. You earned these boards to get here. This is your stage. Don't let them take that from you. This is our house." And that's what I pass on to young comedians all the time. Conversation, not a presentation. Is it your act? Yes. It's your job to make it look like it's not an act.
That's beautiful. Every time I see Sammy in something, he must have been amazing to work with.
I learned more about show business sitting in the wings watching him. He commanded a stage. Sammy Davis Jr. would bothers me the most is when I watch young African-American comedians making fun of him. He was the Jackie Robinson of show business. He paid dues unlike no one paid in his day. And he paved the way for all the entertainers, African-Americans that come along. Sammy Davis Jr. could sing as good as anybody out there. Frank Sinatra said he never heard Sammy hit a clinker. Frank would hit a clinker once in a while. The greatest pop singer of all time. He said Sammy never hit a clinker. Sammy could sing as good as anybody out there. He could dance better than anybody out there. He could do comedy as good as any comedian I ever saw in my life. He could do impressions better than any impression out there. He could play the trumpet, he could play the piano, he could play the drums, and he was a master at commanding the stage. So I would sit in the wings and watch him every night, how he took over that stage. And there's never been anybody like him in show business. He was a parade,
There was, so I grew up with, loving Michael Jackson, Jackson 5, Michael Jackson, and I found a clip of Sammy, maybe I saw it about 8 years ago. Sammy performing Bad, Michael Jackson's Bad. I don't know, have you ever seen that clip?
No, I haven't.
It's great because the way he just said, it's like with comic timing, and he's like, he sets up Michael Jackson. He sets it up on stage, blah, 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 blah. And he's like, "There's not enough money in this whole town to get me to do that, boy." And then you hear him go, "Ha, ta, ta." And then he just goes into it, the misdirection. And "Because I'm bad." And he does his own version. And it's like, "That's enough of that. That's enough of that." And then the band stops. And it was great to see that.
He was just, I'd sit in the wings night after night watching him. He was the most generous guy to us. He loved comedians, and he paid dues like no one ever paid before, and he remembered that. He never forgot that he was an opening act and struggled. When I first went into Las Vegas, I'd never worked there before. He put my name up on the marquee at Caesar's Palace. A lot of stars only put their name up there. They didn't put the opening act up there. Sometimes Tom Jones or Diana Ross, when they put their name on the marquee, there wasn't room to park your car in the parking lot. It was so big. But Sammy insisted my name would go up on the marquee, and he insisted to go up there big. He said, "Tommy, if I do this, we're setting a precedent here. Then any act that you work with in the future, we set a precedent already of the kind of billing you get on that marquee." He then went inside. Caesar's Palace is the toughest comedy room in show business. I hated it. I hated it because of the high ceiling. Comedians like a low ceiling. Laughter is sound. It hits the ceiling and comes at us. It was a high ceiling. I loved the Sands, the Desert Inn, the Riviera Hotel, the Golden Nugget. These were great comedy showrooms because they had low ceilings. Great for comedians. But also in those days they had food. So the comedian went out during dinner. at a terrible comedy room.
That's awful.
It's the worst situation of all.
Yeah.
Sammy, knowing it was my first time in Las Vegas, after making sure my name was on the marquee, we go to rehearsal. Nat Brandywine was the entertainment director at Caesars in those days. Nat said to me at rehearsal, he said, Tom, you'll do 20 minutes. Sammy does an hour and 10. We do 90-minute shows here. Sammy said, hold on, Nat. This is Tommy's first time here. He's got a score. The critics are all going to be in the audience. He said, and because of dinner, he said, it'll be very tough to score. He said, I'm going to come out and I'll do 3 songs. He said, maybe 4. He said, and when the room is ready, I'll bring Tom out. And Nat said, it's your show, Sammy, whatever you want to do. What he did for me, every night he'd go out to the waiters and waitresses, their job is to get that room cleared before the headliner comes out. When the headliner comes out, that room better be cleared, waiters and waitresses out of the room, and the show, the opening act was we suffered under being the opening act.
Yeah, you don't want to hear like silverware and people and
clanging and waiters interrupting everything.
White napkins.
But yeah, people
distracting.
People, and instead of laughing, they point the fork at you. They go, Anyhow, Sammy would come out. When Sammy would walk out first, the waiters and waitresses see the headliner. They were taking food away from people that hadn't even started eating yet. He did 3 to 4 songs every night. Wow. Now the room is cleared, and he'd say, "Ladies and gentlemen, my audience, I feel is like family. You stuck with me during the good years, the bad years." He said, "And I feel you're like family." He said, "So whenever somebody does something for you like that, family or friends, you want to do something for them, like maybe bring them a present. I got a present for you. I saw this young comedian, and I think you're going to like him, blah, 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 blah. Here's Tom Dreesen." I'd walk out there. He had him in the palm of his hand.
That's great.
He'd walk off and give them to me like that. And I'd open every night. I'd say, "I've always dreamed that one day I'd work Las Vegas, and I dreamed that it would be Caesar's Palace. But I never dreamed that Sammy Davis Jr. would be my opening act." And Sammy would laugh in the wings and wave at me.
Yeah.
But that's how giving he was. He never forgot that he paid those dues. He was just
that's incredible.
He was a great human being.
And that kind of shows you like how confident he was. It's like, it's just there was a time, back to myself, but there was time as a stand-up where I was afraid that I didn't want the audience to see me until they introduced me. And then I got to the point where you play enough places, that's not possible. They're going to see you walk into the club. They're going to catch a glimpse of you using the restroom or whatever, because you don't always have a bathroom backstage. And now I'm at a point where, I literally will I've opened up the show for, there's a show that I started doing up in Santa Clarita, and I'll open up the show, welcome the people, and then bring up my friends, and then I'll close the show because I realize it doesn't matter. I know I'm going to get them, and it's not. But in the first 10 years of comedy, it's scary.
Yeah, but see, again, when I said this is your house,
right?
They're in your house. And once you get control of that and you really feel that, then it doesn't matter if they see you, they don't see you. It doesn't matter if you're dropping. It doesn't matter if you're sitting with them till it's your time to get up. When you have that kind of confidence.
You know what? You're right. You're absolutely right. Because I did a show in a hangar at Fallon, Nevada, and it was for the Navy. It was a big awards ceremony. And I had to follow the I think it's called the color guard, where they have the flags, and and they have moment of silence, and what I wanted to do originally was be backstage, but the guy that hired me, he said, "Can you sit with me?" He goes, and we're gonna sit right there in the front. He goes, because if you don't sit with me, I'm gonna have to sit next to the admiral, and I don't know if he was joking or what, but so I sat there and had dinner with everybody. And that was one of the first times where I'm actually, like you said, eating dinner with the audience, and then "Please welcome Darren Carter," and you just kind of stand up and,
I do it at corporate dates a lot. Oftentimes, part of the corporate date is they'll say, "Mr. Dreesen, they want the president of the company's a fan, and he'd like you to sit with him and his wife for dinner," and I'll sit there and listen to their stuff, and then when it's time to get on, I'll just get up and go, and you come from the audience. After a while, again, once you're comfortable in your own skin, every comedian starts out doing an impression of another comedian,
right?
You start. I can watch new comedians. I'll say, "Oh, gee, he likes David Letterman, or he likes Jerry Seinfeld." You can see who they're influenced by. But every new comedian starts out doing an impression of another comedian because we knew that worked. Yeah. We saw a comedian do like that, and so we act like that. But then, after a while, you let a little bit of you out one night, and if it doesn't get a laugh, you go back into hiding behind that other comedian.
Yeah.
Your impression of a comedian.
I was Robin Williams and Eddie Murphy. That's who I was.
Then after a while, you let a little bit you out and it gets a laugh. And then you let a little bit more of you out and it gets that. And pretty soon you become you on stage. Picasso said, try to paint like another artist. I dare you. Try to paint like another artist. In doing so, you're going to fall short, but you're going to find out what kind of an artist you are. Your artistry will come through. So eventually you become comfortable in your own skin and you're Darren Carter. That's who you are. And that I tell comedians, I encourage them, find out that, because there's never been anyone like you ever before. No one's ever had your same parents. No one's ever had your same growing up. So you're as unique as a snowflake. When you go on that stage, you're not just another comedian. You're a special comedian because no one's ever had your same experiences, you know.
That's absolutely right. There's a couple of questions I want to run through before I forget. Okay. So back to Las Vegas. I'm a huge Elvis Presley fan. Did you ever meet Elvis Presley or see him live, perform live, or?
As a matter of fact, he's in the other room. Elvis, come on out.
Can you imagine?
Well, you know that 1 in 20 people in America still think that Elvis is alive. I'm serious. 1 in 20 Americans, if you took a poll, 1 in 20 Americans think that Elvis is still alive. And that shows you how polls are just nonsense. But no, that was my one regret. I was a fan like you of Elvis. Yeah. I never saw his show live, and I never got to meet him. It just was a different time, you know.
Yeah.
I would have loved to, you know.
On Sirius XM, I every now and then I go back to the channel 19 and listen to the Elvis channel. I love it. I love the stories. I love hearing his live performances. I like his ad libs and him talking. And okay, so the next one, my son's 12. He's a musician, loves playing piano. He's in concert. He's seen Neil Sedaka play 3 times. My wife wrote this wonderful letter, and my son got to meet Neil Sedaka last Saturday. Have you ever met Neil Sedaka?
Yeah, well, I did a cruise ship with him, and he was headlining on one side of the ship, and I was on another side, and I met him, and it was very nice. We flew back on the plane together, and his wife was sitting next to him, who I think is also his manager. Oh. I think a woman with him, or maybe it's just his manager. But anyhow, yeah, I met him. A very talented guy who wrote a lot of hit songs.
Yeah.
Those where the money's at. Write songs. Right. Own your own publishing. You know, produce shows and own them shows. You know.
Have you ever written songs?
I've written poems.
Poems.
You know? I'll tell you something I wrote. This may or may not interest. I wrote 2 things that I don't know if we have time for them, but
we do.
I think you'd like these.
Yeah.
Opening for Sammy Davis one time in Caesars, my first time at Caesars, the showroom was packed, and Sammy killed the audience and all that, and the people were standing cheering Sammy, and then I was in a wings watch. We went to the dressing room, and the room cleared out, and we were going to go have a bite to eat, and I was walking over to Sammy's dressing room, and I walked back out on stage, and the room was empty, totally empty, and I thought, you know, they were just there, loving him, and now they're gone. All that love is gone out of that arena. So I wrote 2 things, you know, in my life that have become the comedy. One is called The Sound of Laughter. As far back as I can remember, or shortly thereafter, I loved to hear the sound of laughter. Whether grown-ups or children, it really didn't matter to me. If I could make people laugh, I was as happy as I could be. You see, when you make people laugh, they get such a lift. My mom once told me this is a God-given gift. She said, you'll get so much love, and yet you're still able to give. I knew that I wanted to do this for as long as I live. So I left my home in Harvey, Illinois to tour around the country and spread some joy. Success was ahead. I just didn't know how far. Soon I was broke and sleeping in a car. But I worked, and I prayed, and I planned, and I dreamed. There were times I was alone, or so it seemed. I begged for jobs everywhere I could, and I bombed a lot of times. But I started getting good. They laughed one night in Boston, I'm proud to say, and soon they were laughing out in L.A. Now, if you're a comedian and you want America to know, you had to get a spot on the Johnny Carson show. Well, that happened one night, and what a joy for me. Soon my name was on Caesar's Palace marquee. Well, who knows, maybe one day I'll become a big star, but if I don't, it doesn't matter at all. Believe me when I tell you I had a ball. So now I wish for everyone what's happened to me, to find the work that you love, because that's really the key. So when I die and go to the hereafter, I'll miss all of you, my friends, but most of all, I'll miss the sound of your laughter.
Oh, that's incredible, Tom.
Now I'm going to tell you another one that you should really adhere to.
Yeah.
He sat inside his dressing room, feeling 10 feet tall. He could still hear their laughter echoing through the hall. Many long years of struggle, nights inside the car, had all been worth this moment for tonight. Tonight he was a star. Suddenly a man walked in, 80 years old of a day. He said, "Sorry, son, I thought you'd gone. I'll clean up if I may." The young man said, "Go ahead, write it, sir. I won't be very long." He said, "Hey, I'll bet in your time, many funny men have come and gone. Am I as good as those?" Before he heard himself exclaim, surprised that he had asked that, but compelled to just the same. The old man smiled as if he knew the hardships of the game. He said, "Yes, son, I've seen them all, and the way they handled fame. Now, if you're really interested, come back on stage with me and let me have your ear. You see those empty seats out there that held your many fans, and that picture of your family and friends that's on your makeup stand? Well, when the sweet applause has had its day and you're left alone, the truest fans who knew you then will still be there at home." Young man said, "Hey, thank you, sir. And what is your name?" He said, My name is Old Freddie. I wish you the best, because I know you're ready." Next night, he could hardly wait for the second show to end so he could catch the cleaning man and talk with him again. And as the owner passed his door, he paused to say goodnight. He asked the comedian why he's sticking around. "Is everything all right?" He said, "I'm waiting for Old Freddie. I talked with him last night. He gave me some great advice, the kind I know is right." The owner said, "But son, Old Freddie ain't been here for years. He came here when this place was built, and he even died right here." The comedian said, "Wow." And he looked up and he said, "Thank you, old man. And what was your name? You've given me more than my fortune and fame." That's called The Comedian and Old Freddie.
Wow.
That's
great.
Yeah.
So
I wrote that one time too. And by the way, that became a song.
Yeah.
The Sound of Laughter became a song, a country song that a guy named Rick Anthony sang, but it never went anywhere. But
Yeah.
An answer to your question.
I love it though. I love it, and it's so in the poem that you did, he's saying like, so the audience is in the you hear the laughter, but then really the people that are with you the whole time is like your family, the people that
This laughter is fleeting. Laughter is love, but only for the moment. Their love is forever.
That's true.
And so it's just getting your priorities, and that's what occurred to me when I saw all that love for Sammy, that cheering, Sammy, and then they went home. They went to their houses and they went home, and all of a sudden, all that love was gone from the arena. It felt good, but it wasn't permanent.
Right. Like fame is fleeting, as they say.
Yeah.
It's like, so. And
I'll give you another great quote. After my first appearance on The Tonight Show, Johnny Carson told me something that I never forgot. He said, "For every 100 men that can handle adversity, only one can handle success." Along with success comes a responsibility to remain successful. It's a tremendous responsibility. So I know a lot of comedians that could handle adversity, but when success came, they couldn't handle it. And I knew 5 comedians that committed suicide. 5 good stand-up comedians that committed suicide. And I knew another 20 that let alcohol and drugs destroy their life. Success is a big, big animal that if you don't have yourself in order, you don't have a balance in your life, you don't have a good perspective on who you are and what's important in your life outside of you, then success is going to be very bad on you. If you're an insecure, let me digress. I've always said that 85% of stand-up comedians are insecure, neurotic, sometimes psychotic, love-starved wrecks. If you're an insecure, neurotic, love-starved wreck, when you're poor and unknown, when you're rich and famous, it doesn't get better, it gets worse. Because you thought rich and famous was going to take away all that angst, and when it doesn't, then you have to say, I got to go inside. Something's wrong here. So I try to talk to young comedians about, get that in order first. Get that balance in your life where you know who you are and what's important in your life other than you. The last thing I want to say about this, when I sold life insurance, guess what I talked about all the time? Life insurance. Everybody I met, Darren, so you're married now, got a kid. You know what you need, Darren? You got to have some responsibility. But I talked about life insurance because that was my income. When you become a stand-up comedian, guess what you talk about all the time? You. You can't help it. That's your product. That's what you're trying to sell. It doesn't mean you're egotistical or narcissistic. You're trying to sell Darren Carter to the country, to the world, that I'm a funny guy. And you're trying to sell it. So you spend a lot of time talking about you. And you got to learn to get out of that and talk about them, that wife, that child. What's important to you? David Letterman is one of the best fathers you'll ever meet in your life. And that son coming to him late in life was the greatest thing that ever happened to him. His son's name is Harry, and he adores Harry. And he wants to be with Harry all the time, and he wants to be a partner with Harry, he wants to be a friend to Harry, he wants to be a father to Harry. And it took him out of that 32 years of being on the air, day in and day out, week in and week out, to where you're obsessed with ratings and numbers and all these other things. And then Harry came along, and he realized what's really important in life. And I'll give you another thing. I used to read when I was in the Navy. I was a voracious reader. And I still am to this day. I used to read these in novels, these two words, unconditional love. And I didn't quite fathom how you could love without any conditions at all. And one day they handed me my first child. And when I held that baby in my arms, that little girl, I knew what unconditional love was. That I was going to love this child until the day I die. And to this day, she walks into a room and I brighten up. Both my daughters. That's what's important.
Yeah. Back to what you said, the pie. Think of your life as a pie. Career. Let me see if I remember. You got the career, family, friends,
relationship.
Yeah.
And self. That was the other one.
Oh, self. That was the fifth one. Okay.
That was the fifth one. So if you cut that pie into 5 pieces, would they be equal? How much time do you spend on bettering yourself, your health, your taking care of yourself,
yeah.
Your relationship, your wife, your husband or whatever it is, career, friends, and family, your children. So how much time if that pie is equal, then you got a good balance in life. But if it's 90, like mine was at one time, all career,
I think I heard Waylon Jennings in an interview once, and he said he was touring so much and career, and then he came back and he saw his baby, his child. He goes, next thing you know, he was 10 years old already. He goes, he's a 10-year-old boy staring at me in the living room, calling me daddy, and I'm like, dang, I need to slow down because so not that you want to slow down too much, but you like you said, you have to make it a priority.
I'll tell you what happens. It happened to me. It happened to you. It happened to any comedian, anybody entertainer. You struggle so hard to get recognition, to get work. And you keep thinking, I need some work. I don't have rent money. I don't have groceries. And one day I did my first Tonight Show, and all of a sudden, my whole life changed. William Morris signed me. CBS signed me to a development deal. I was doing Dinah Shore, Merv Griffin, Mike Douglas, Johnny Carson, Midnight Special, Rock Concert, Soul Train, American Bandstand. I'm doing all those shows. I was the only white comedian ever to be on Soul Train. I was getting corporate dates. I was getting booked. All those artists I told you before all wanted me to work with them. One day I was on an airplane flying east, and I looked out the window and I saw myself on a plane going west. And I said, I think I'm working too much. But I was on a plane one time. I had read everything but the air sickness bag. I was on a long flight, and I picked up a magazine about anthropology. Yeah. And I wasn't interested in anthropology, but this Dr. Carl Sagan, who I loved, he was on the Tonight Show a lot. Johnny Carson loved him. But I read this article where he's talking about dinosaurs ruled this planet Earth for 250 million years. Man in his present form from Cro-Magnon to Neanderthal now, maybe 120,000 years. And he said that this planet was here for like 10 billion years, according to science. And it's going to be here 10 billion more before the sun destroys the Earth. And that the Earth one day will look not unlike Mars looks right now. And I thought, I set the magazine on, I said, this planet was here 10 billion years before I was born. Not thousands, not million, 10 billion before I was born. And it's going to be here 10 billion after I die. That means my lifetime in this planet is a blink of an eye, a speck of sand. Pow, it's over. Blink of an eye. Snap your fingers. It's less than that. Yeah, less than that. A blink of an eye. That you would spend one moment of that blink of an eye bitching and moaning and cursing your lot in life is an absurdity. That you would spend one moment of that blink of an eye going to a job you hate every day when you know you wanted to be a singer, a comedian, a dancer, a gardener, a doctor. It's spitting in your master's face saying, I don't appreciate this great gift of life. Every day is a celebration in your life. Every day, if someone knocked on your door every day of your life and gave you this original, unique gift, every day, how much would you appreciate the gift? How much would you appreciate the giver of the gift? Every day is a brand new day. Every day is a celebration. We're here for a blink of an eye. And that's why you don't want to look out a window and see yourself on a plane going the other way, and enjoy the moment.
Tom, I'd love to have you back on if we can arrange this. This is great. I'd love to have you back on. Would you like to do it again?
No, your last check bounced, Darren. Yes, of course, I'd be happy to do it. And I remember, didn't you and I do an interview upstairs of the comedy club? Was that where we did the interview?
The Laugh Factory? Was it
No. Did we do an interview? Where did we do the interview? You had a partner.
Oh yeah, that interview. That was you're right. It was at Universal Studios at the
Exactly. Yeah.
Yes,
I remember that interview. Yeah,
that's where it was at.
Yeah. I remember.
And then I did I think I referred you to a guy that was writing a book about the history of black comedy.
Oh yeah,
Darryl.
And he put me in the book.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, because I had more African American fans than most white comics throughout the years because I did Soul Train. I did an album in front of an all black audience called That White Boy's Crazy.
Did that?
It's still out. Yeah.
I looked that up. Was that? Am I right on this? From what I read, was that in 1989?
Around that time, I did it in Harvey Allen.
Yeah.
I can't tell you. I think you're right.
Or I think it's at 89, and it's weird because it's funny how time flies because that wasn't that long ago, but at the same time, it was like 30 years. It's been 30 years.
Yeah.
But.
I think it was even before that. I think I might
because
have
you were doing all the.
I think I might have done it in '84 or something like that.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I think. Anyhow,
they get the numbers wrong and all that kind of stuff.
I think it was '84, but I was the only white comedian to ever do an album in front of an all black audience because I grew up. I grew up in a predominantly black area, and you're running out of time here. I don't want to.
No, we're good, and the. I like how I put you on the spot. Will you do it again? And you're like, no, I won't.
Wait, but by the way, and you know why you laughed?
Yeah.
You know why you laughed?
Why?
Because when you're writing a joke, whenever you're doing a joke, and I teach comedians this all the time, comedy is two things when you're writing a joke. Number one is 9/10 surprise. The audience laughs because they didn't think you were going to say that or do that. So the setup line has to hide the punchline. And the other rule is there are no victimless jokes. Now, I just right there illustrated that.
Yeah.
You said to me, "Would you do this again?" You gave me the straight line, and I said no.
I'm
you
laughing again
because you never thought I was going to say that, so we laughed.
I thought
and the other, you're the victim in the joke, right?
Right.
And so that's when you're writing jokes. That's what you think.
Especially the way you said it, because we followed that with the Carl Sagan thing about life is a gift, the gift is the giver. Would you love to? I'd love to have you back on. No, thank you. I'm good. We're good, Darren. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do these interviews too long where I'm like, it's so interesting and I just keep talking. That's why I almost want to wait to do it again. But I want to say in closing, I usually like to end, I ask the guest, you've already sort of said this in many different ways, but I like to ask the guest if they have any words of encouragement, words of wisdom, things that they've learned along the way that they would like to, express to some of our younger listeners.
To comedians or just to anybody in general?
Just comedians in life, anything off the top of your head. Although you've said so many wonderful things today, but
I would like to for younger people to in this country to realize that you, honest to God, live in the greatest country on this planet, and if you don't believe that, then you don't really know what is around the world. America is, with all of its flaws, is the greatest country to live in. Study your history. Study, why we have the freedoms that we have. Because men and women gave up their lives so that we could have this freedom. And they always say there are no justifiable wars. But I'll tell you what, if we hadn't won World War II, there was no doubt what Hitler and Tojo had in mind for this country. There was no doubt. Those men and women of that era were the greatest generation. I say that I'm an ex-GI. I do a lot of shows for the troops and will continue to do that. But I would say to young people out there, study about why America is the greatest country in the world, and that all of the flaws we had, the mistakes we made, and they'll always go back to slavery and those things, and they're right, those are terrible things, but we also rectified those mistakes. Those people, there were a lot of people that did wrongs, but we rectified. Winston Churchill once said, democracy is the worst form of government ever written, however, there's none better. And I agree with that. This Constitution of the United States that we have was written by geniuses that were 26 years old, 28 years old. These were young men that were just brilliant putting this Constitution together. So I'd say that if you don't have gratitude for the the country you live in and for the people around you, you're going to live a very unhappy life.
Yeah.
You know, you're going to be, you know, everybody wants to moan and groan and become a victim, but you're not a victim. You're a victor. You won. You're not a victim. And I'll close with this, and you've heard me do this on stage. Talking at an all-male college one time recently, I was talking about when should you leave your parents' home? And one boy raised his hand. He said, when we're 50 or 60 years old. And I said, really? And a lot of kids laughed. And I said, how many agree with that? And several people raised their hand. And I said to the boy, why do you think that? He said, because we didn't ask to be here. We didn't ask to be here. And I said, how many think that? And a lot of people raised their hands. That we didn't ask to be here. And a lot of people think that. And if you think about it, you're saying, well, you know, that makes sense. You didn't ask to be here. But let's get some facts. When the male and the female make love, from the male comes 5 million seeds. Did you know that? 2.5 million die instantly. The other millions die along the way. And soon there's only 100,000 seeds left. There's 50,000 seeds left. There's 100 seeds left. There's only 5 seeds left. 4, 3, 2, 1, you. You. Don't ever tell me you didn't ask to be here. Bullshit. You fought to be here. You were born a winner. 5 million seeds and you're the survivor. I say to the audience, applaud yourselves. I'm in a room full of winners.
That's right. That's right. Damn, I love that. Tom, thank you so much. This is that I needed this Pocket Party podcast. This I wanted to make this put some positivity in the world, and you're just the guest to do this. And thank you for being on the show. And I, like I said, I'd love to have you back.
Let's go have dinner.
Let's do it. Let's have dinner. Where are we going? Any ideas?
Maria's Kitchen on Ventura Boulevard.
Let's do it. Thank you, Tom.
We're done with this interview.
Well, look at you. You made it all the way through. How great was that? Tom Dreesen, my man, Tom Dreesen. Thank you, sir. And thank you for your service, and thank you for your service to other people. And guys, go to YouTube and check out any of Tom's videos. Check out Darren Carter channel. If you like YouTube and you like going on there and you want to subscribe to my channel, that way you'll be the first to get the videos. Also, please like and subscribe and share if you want. Share these videos. I've been really having a great time editing and adding some more, as the kids say, dank me millennial style. Close-up, zooms, sound effects, you know, fun stuff like that. So go to YouTube and look up Darren Carter, and please subscribe to my channel and leave a comment. I answer back all the comments until it becomes overwhelming, until it really blows up, until it really booms. I got you, baby. I got you. You leave a comment, and my guarantee to you is that I will answer back within 24 hours, sometimes within the hour, depending on what I got going on. Anyways, thank you guys for supporting the Pocket Party podcast, and we'll see you next week. Love you. Bye. All right, now, don't hurt nobody. Don't hurt nobody. Be careful. Be careful. Don't hurt nobody, including yourself. Much love.
Everybody listen to Darren Carter. We all know he's the party starter. So if you want to listen to a podcast for free, then listen to the Pocket Party.